Bundy Ranch, jury nullification, and pardons. I'll get into that in a few minutes, but first a brief history. In 1848, to conclude the Mexican-American War, the United States was granted land which is now the state of Nevada, and that land included what is the area disputed with regards to the Bundy Ranch. Then, in 1864, Nevada became a state. When it became a state, it gave up any claim to federal land in the boundaries of the state of Nevada. In 1948, Cliven Bundy's father moved to the ranch where they are now staying. In 1954, Cliven Bundy's father secured a contract to buy grazing rights from the federal government. Those grazing right contracts renewed every 10 years. In 1993, Cliven Bundy's current grazing contract expired. He was presented with a new contract, and that contract had terms in it that would make it so his ranch would not be economically viable. At that time, he went out and looked into the law, and he developed a legal theory, or found a legal theory indicating that the federal government did not own the land in question. The federal government, the state of Nevada, and Clark County all believe that in fact the federal government owns that land. So in 1993, Cliven Bundy refused to renew his grazing contract, and he continued to graze cattle on the land that the federal government claimed to own. To his credit, Cliven Bundy tried to send a check to Clark County, Nevada for the grazing rights. I believe they cashed it, however they refunded the money to him. Then in about 2012 or 13, the federal government went and got a court order indicating that Cliven Bundy had to remove his cattle from the land, or if he didn't do that within 45 days, the order empowered the federal government to remove the cattle from the land. In about the April of 2014, the BLM was going to act on the order and remove the cattle. However, they encountered protesters, and among those protesters was the Bundy family. Eventually there was a standoff, and the BLM backed down and they did not remove the cattle. Then in about the January and February of 2016, the federal government issued charges to to Cliven Bundy and 4 of his sons. They have been in federal custody ever since then. I believe that incarceration takes the notion of speedy trial, which is guaranteed by the Constitution, and twists it beyond any recognition. The trial is now set for October 16th, 2017. The Bundys are fighting a 3-front war with the federal government. Front number 1 is to get Cliven Bundy and his 4 sons out of incarceration. Front number 2 is they want to preserve their use of the land they were using, and they do not claim to own it, but they claim to have rights to use the grazing rights. And 3, they would like to have all the land that the federal government claims to own in various western states be declared to not belong to the federal government. First is the issue of getting a pardon for the Bundys. Implicit in the accepting of a pardon is an acceptance that you committed a crime. Therefore, if they got a pardon, their problem number one of the Bundy family members being incarcerated would be taken care of. However, they would not take care of problem number two, the federal government's claim to own the land their cattle were grazing on, or claim number three, that the federal government owns a lot of land in the various western states. And what would likely soon happen, and I don't work for the BLM nor do they consult with me, they're going to come back out to the Bundy Ranch. The next time they come out, they're going to bring a lot more people, and they're going to bring some buses, and anybody who gets in the way of their removing of the cattle is going to be arrested and put in the bus and taken to a detention center. Then, so with regards to front 2 and 3, a pardon would not be any good to them. Additionally, if they win their jury trial on the charges against them, it will not do them any good on the second and third front, which is keeping their ranch and declaring the land not to belong to the federal government. Then there gets to be the issue of nullification. There are two aspects to nullification. The first aspect is a jury can say, given all the circumstances of this case, even though we believe that the defendant committed the crime, we believe the defendant should be found not guilty. Then there's a second aspect of nullification, and that is the jury can say, we don't think anybody should be convicted of this crime. There is also a darker side to jury nullification, particularly if the judge says to the jury, you can figure it out yourselves. Then what happens if the jury decides that the persons involved were jerks and they stretch the definitions of the crime so they're convicted? I do not know a whole lot about the jury case in Oregon where Ammon and Ryan Bundy were found not guilty. From the brief amount I read from two of the jurors who chose to speak about it, they said that they were not convinced by the Bundy's arguments, that they felt that something was wrong with what the Bundys did. However, they also found that the federal government had not proved their case, and that's why they found them not guilty. So, in the event that the Bundys either get a pardon or they get jury nullification, they are still going to be facing the problem of the federal government removing their cattle, and the results of the trial will have nothing to do with the federal government's claim that it owns nearly half of the land in about 11 western states.